It's my pleasure tonight to introduce to you a great American, my friend, candidate, Constitution Party and Presidency of the United States of America, Mr. Chuck Baldwin. I want you to give him a real welcome.
To be standing in this historic church and to see my good friend Greg Dixon once again, his wife, his son, now pastor of this wonderful church. You all have been through the fire. You have stood the test of time and trial, and I want you to know that you are not alone in this fight, that there are many of us throughout America that really do believe in those same basic fundamental principles that you folks have gone through the fire to defend. And we sure do thank you. And I would wish that we could have Mr. Obama and Mr. McCain here at the Indianapolis Baptist Temple as well to present themselves to this body, because if there ever is a body in America that deserves to have who would be leaders of America stand before them and present their candidacies, it is the congregation of the Indianapolis Baptist Temple. And I do thank God for you. Just for a quick introduction, I was born and raised a Hoosier. I was raised born in the little town of LaPorte, Indiana. Anybody know where LaPorte is? Up there in the northwestern part of the state, about 30 miles due west of South Bend. And stayed there until I graduated from high school, LaPorte High School, in 1971. I went out to Bible college and Midwestern Baptist College in Pontiac, Michigan. Worked in the assembly line there at the General Motors trucking coach while I was going to school. My dad was a welder by trade. He was a converted alcoholic. His life story was played on two separate occasions, not played, but recorded on two separate occasions at the Pacific Army Mission Unshackled program. If you've ever listened to that radio program, you've probably heard my dad's life story. My dad was the greatest personal soul winner I've ever known in my life. I've known a lot of great soul winners, but I've never known any that could win men one-on-one to Christ like my dad could. And I just appreciate so much the influence that he has been in my life. He could not afford to pay my way through college, so I did it the old-fashioned way. I worked my way through school. Worked 40 hours at the assembly line, and then went to school. And while I was there at Midwestern in Pontiac, I met my wife, Connie, her maiden name Cole. And the first time she said hello, she spoke with that rich southern drawl. She's from Tennessee, and as soon as she said hello, I fell in love with her. And we were married after our sophomore year of college, and then we left Midwestern and went to Liberty, what is now Liberty University in Lynchburg, Virginia. And I graduated there in 1975, the very first graduation class of that school. And went to Pensacola, Florida and started the Crossroad Baptist Church from scratch. We had 6 people our first service. Myself, my wife, our little girl at the time, 6 months old, one other couple, and my mother-in-law. And I've often told seminarians and Bible college students around the country when I've had the chance to speak to them, I said, if you want a real challenge, not only will you try starting a church from scratch, but you'll try it with your mother-in-law. But I'm here to tell you that she's still in the congregation with us 33 years later. She's still standing by our side. She's still faithful. She's my best supporter, my #1 fan outside of my own family. And I could not have a better mother-in-law than her. And I tell you, God has been so good to my family. Just to give you a quick overview, I have 3 children, a girl and 2 boys. The daughter is married to a structural engineer. He's also the youth pastor of our church. She's the church pianist. They have 3 children, and they're all loving the Lord and serving the Lord with us. And then our oldest son owns his own construction business. He has a lovely Christian wife and 3 boys. And he sings in a quartet, and he's involved in our ministry, and really an asset to our church. Our youngest son is an attorney. He was a prosecutor for the state of Florida, but now he owns his own law practice. And he's our worship leader, also sings in the quartet, and All three of our kids love the Lord, serve the Lord, in church with us. And I tell you what, as far as I'm concerned, being the father of a great Christian family is greater than being president of the United States. And I just... God doesn't do anything more for me than what He's already done by giving me the family He has. I could never repay Him in 1,000 lifetimes. When I was a senior in high school, I went forward in a little church in Winamac, Indiana with Brother Larcy Hall, the pastor, and the evangelist was a man by the name of Bill Papadopoulos. I've never met him before. I've not met him since. I don't know where he is. I have no knowledge of anything about his ministry after that. But on that night in that little town, in that little church, I went forward and I told the Lord that I would do anything that He wanted me to do, and I'd go anywhere He wanted me to go, and I'd be anything that He wanted me to be. I didn't know then that it meant pastoring a church. I didn't know then that it meant founding a church. I didn't know then that it meant being a radio talk show host for many years. I didn't know then that it meant becoming a syndicated columnist and author. And I certainly did not know then that it meant running for President of the United States on the Constitution Party ticket. But I meant it as much today as I meant it then. I want to do whatever He wants me to do. And I know what I'm doing in 2008 is exactly what God wants me to do. Christians will come to me often and they'll say, Chuck, we must elect a Christian president, or a Christian congressman, or a Christian senator, or whatever the case may be. And it seems that all they look for out of a candidate, I'm talking about our Christian brothers and friends, all they look for is just someone who will give lip profession to Christianity. But what I found is that most every politician professes to be a Christian, at least every 4 years. It's incredible to me how gullible and naive our Christian brethren are today. I submit to you that had Al Gore or John Kerry been elected president and had promoted the same policies and practices of George W. Bush, the religious right would have been up in arms years ago. But because it was a Christian Republican in the White House, he's been given a free pass on foible after foible, dereliction after dereliction, and compromise after compromise. Beyond that, when someone dares to criticize the unconstitutional policies of this president, Christians attack the messenger with a vengeance. I could read to you some of the letters and emails that I've received from some of the most notable Christian pastors and ministers in this country, many of whom, if not most of whom, you would know immediately if I gave you their names, and have told me in no uncertain terms how much they did not appreciate what I wrote or what I said, how wrong they thought I was, how sinful or carnal or backslidden I was to criticize this great Christian President George W. Bush because of an unconstitutional or otherwise wicked policy that he had just proposed. But I remind myself what Theodore Roosevelt said. He said, to announce that there must be no criticism of the President or that we are to stand by the President, right or wrong, is not only unpatriotic and servile, but it is morally treasonable to the American public. Nothing but the truth should be spoken about him or anyone else. But it is even more important to tell the truth, pleasant or unpleasant, about him than about anyone else. Close quote. Roosevelt understood what we all need to understand, and that is what exactly it is our country was founded upon. And our country was not founded upon two political parties or the two-party system. Our country was founded upon three documents: the Declaration of Independence, our birth certificate, the U.S. Constitution, and the Bill of Rights. The principles of our founding documents created an independent and limited government that recognizes the authority of man's Creator and our ultimate submission to Him. When you read the Declaration of Independence, you don't even get out of the first paragraph, and you read the laws of nature and nature's God. Thomas Jefferson, not the most spiritual of the founding fathers, in fact I even doubt that he understood salvation as you and I do. But Thomas Jefferson understood that there was a God, and they understood the basic natural law that God had created and given to man. And he codified it in the Declaration of Independence, and he said basically that our entire form of government is dependent upon the laws of nature, nature's God. Natural law, the instinctive understanding of basic morality, the innate understanding of good and evil as provided by our Creator. William Blackstone's commentaries on the law were the chief influence upon the legal philosophy of America's founders. Those commentaries formed the most authoritative manual of law for over 100 years following the War for Independence. Blackstone wrote this: "Man, considered as a creature, must necessarily be subject to the laws of his Creator, for he is entirely a dependent being. And consequently, as man depends absolutely upon his Maker for everything, it is necessary that he should at all points conform to his Maker's will." Close quote. Where Jefferson understood that, he read that. He read the writings of John Locke. He studied Calvin. These founders, mostly Christian men, understood the basic concepts of natural law. You ask the average Christian in America today have you ever heard of natural law? Do you understand natural law? And they'll look at you with that quizzical look, and you know that they don't know what you're talking about. But our founding fathers were well versed in natural law. For the first time in the history of the world, a nation inculcated the Creator's will for the government of mankind into its founding documents. That had never been happened before, and if America ever falls, it will never happen again. It doesn't matter, therefore, what a politician's personal denominational affiliation might be, or what his particular Christian profession might be. When I hire a plumber to come and fix my plumbing, or when I hire an electrician to come and fix my lights, I really don't care whether or not he's a fundamental Baptist, or whether he's a Lutheran, or what his particular denomination might be. I'm going to sign a contract with him. I have an agreement that he's going to do such and such a work for such and such a price. And whenever I give him the money and he leaves my property, I expect the toilet to flush and the lights to turn on. When any office holder, president, congressman, senator, House of Representatives here in Indiana, when Dr. Boyce took the oath, same thing, local county commissioner, doesn't matter. They all say basically the same thing, that they will, to the best of their ability, with one hand on the Bible and the other hand before heaven, before God and man, make a promise they will, to the best of their ability, preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution of the United States of America. And I've said this all over the country, and I've had many Christians that have criticized me before, but I stand by what I'm about to say to you. I would rather elect an unbeliever who will support, protect, and defend the Constitution of the United States than to elect a believer who will not support, protect, and defend the Constitution of the United States. Because he is making a contract with we the people. And what so many Christians, and this is, I think, one of the great misunderstandings of our brothers and sisters in the Lord, is they don't understand the significance of those great documents that our founders have given to us. On the campaign trail, Brother Mike Huckabee, God bless him, I think he meant well, but when I heard him say it, I wanted to scream. He got up and told the media, he said, you know, if I become president, I would like to get a constitutional amendment passed. I'm paraphrasing, but I'm real close. I want to get a constitutional amendment passed that would incorporate God's principles into America. I was watching television when I heard him say it. I stood up and I said, Brother Mike, don't you know God's principles are already in the founding documents of the United States of America? We don't need a new constitutional amendment. We need men and women who will uphold the Constitution we already have. For example, the Declaration says in paragraph 2, again, Jefferson, the author, that we are endowed by our Creator. Jefferson and the other founders were creationists. They believed that God is the one that gave us our liberties and our very lives. If you ask the average American in the church or out of the church today, where do our rights come from? Most of them will say, from government. But you and I both know that that's not true, and Jefferson knew, and the founders knew that our rights do not come from government. They come from God. And and that the only just purpose for government is to simply protect and secure the God-given freedoms that we have. Whenever any government is destructive of those ends, that's what he went on to say in the Declaration, it is the responsibility, it is the duty of the people to throw off such government and to institute for themselves government that will protect and secure the rights of and freedoms of the people. That was the whole purpose of the Declaration of Independence. It was the whole purpose of the War for Independence. We were endowed by our Creator that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Well, we know that God grants rights, freedoms, and independence, not government. The Declaration rightly said that the purpose of government was to secure and protect those rights. This is all part of natural law. Well, where do you find natural law? Well, you find it in Romans chapter 2, verses 14 through 16. Go look it up. It's right there. That God is the giver of life is found in Genesis chapter 2, verse 7. That God grants liberty is found in Galatians chapter 5 and verse 1. The pursuit of happiness is found in Ecclesiastes chapter 3 and verse 13. I hear people all the time say, well, Chuck, we have a secular constitution. It's totally secularistic, and we ought to avoid any form of reference to God. Oh, really? Funny, that's not what I read. I read over there in Article 1, Section 7, Paragraph 2, and I quote, if any bill shall not be returned by the President within 10 days, parenthesis, still quoting, Sundays accepted, close quote. Sundays accepted. The U.S. Constitution exempts Sunday, the day Christians set aside to worship Jesus Christ, from being a legal business day. Our Constitution. Furthermore, Article 7 of the Constitution states, and I quote, done in the convention by the unanimous consent of the states present the 17th day of September in the year, listen carefully, in the year of our Lord, 1787, and of the independence of the United States of America, the 12th, close quote. In our Constitution, it is Jesus Christ who is referred to as our Lord. Thus, the U.S. Constitution concludes by identifying Christ as the Lord of this nation. The Bill of Rights, too, is built upon the laws of nature and of nature's God. The Scriptures commanded us to preach the gospel as Christians and not to forsake the assembling of ourselves together. And so the First Amendment protects the right of man to peaceably assemble and the freedom of speech, along with the freedom of religion and the freedom of the press. And what a lot of people do not know about our history is that if it were not for a Baptist pastor by the name of John Leland, we may not even have a First Amendment. Back in colonial America, there was not always religious liberty provided. In the state of Virginia, where James Madison comes from, and where Leland came from, there had been persecution against our Baptist forebears who refused to submit to the various dogmas of the Anglican Church. And since the Anglican Church controlled the government of the state of Virginia, it was common practice that our Baptist brethren in Virginia were persecuted for not knuckling under their particular prescriptions of theology. Many of our Baptist pastors in Virginia, before the Constitution was enacted and ratified, were imprisoned or jailed or beaten or persecuted in other ways because they would not submit to the various forms and dogmas of Anglicanism. When it came time to draft the Constitution, and as they were looking at what had been drafted to that point, they were concerned that what we might do is trade one form of tyranny across the Atlantic Ocean for another form of tyranny in this side of the Atlantic Ocean. And the one thing that we did not want to do after having fought a bloody, costly war for independence was to turn right around and cede our liberties back to an all-powerful, centralized government that refused to protect the rights and freedoms of the American people, especially the religious liberty of our people. John Leland, who was very influential among the Christian brethren in the state of Virginia, was a close friend of James Madison. He went to Mr. Madison and he said, we will not ratify this Constitution. We will not support this Constitution unless there is a very clear and precise protection of individual freedoms for the American people. And at the very top of the list, the very First Amendment that we now know as the Bill of Rights, the first 10 amendments of the Constitution, must be the freedom of religion. James Madison, who thoroughly agreed with that, decided that he would be the champion for the First Amendment, and you and I today enjoy the freedom of religious liberty and the First Amendment protections of that liberty because of the influence and the tenacity and the courage of a Baptist pastor by the name of John Leland. And if it took a Baptist pastor in colonial America to help protect religious liberty over 200 years ago, and it now takes a Baptist pastor in modern America to help protect religious liberty today, so be it. Because I'm a Christian and because of my background and as a pastor and so forth, I'm often accused by some of those of the Libertarian Party and others of saying, well, I want to create a theocracy in America and I want to try to force people to worship the way I want them to worship, etc. And people who would accuse me of that have absolutely no knowledge or appreciation of who Chuck Baldwin is. You are looking at a man, ladies and gentlemen, today that appreciates religious liberty as much as any of our founding fathers ever did. I do not believe for 1 minute that government has the right to tell any American citizen how to worship or even if they worship. It's none of government's business. We have much support from the LDS community out in the mountain states of Utah and Idaho and Nevada. We have a lot of people that are voting for us and supporting us out in those states. I spent a whole week out in Utah. I traveled from the southern end all the way to the northern end. I was in small towns in Salt Lake City and all points in between. And I went through those little cities and towns, and I found people there that were just like us, that wanted to have freedom, they wanted to have liberty. And while we have great differences in our doctrinal and our theological understanding, it is the job of the Church of Jesus Christ to evangelize. It is the job of the government to protect the Church's right to evangelize. I'll tell you what's going on. We have many people in our fundamental evangelical circles today that want the government to do their job for them. And I say to the pastors of America, sir, it's not my job as president to do your job for you. If the preachers of America were preaching like they should, if they had the courage that they should, and the boldness that they should, we wouldn't be in the mess we're in today. Because they are cowardly and weak and impotent and are unwilling to take the stands that are not popular and preach the truth as they should, as preachers, they want to look to government to make up the slack, and that's wrong. And I was one of very few evangelicals around the country that stood in opposition to George Bush's faith-based initiative. I said if there is anything that violates the First Amendment to the Constitution, it is George Bush's faith-based initiative. It is not the government's concern. You see, not only is it not the concern in the sense of the entanglement and the finances and the money and all that, that's bad enough. But worse than that, there is not a sugar stick that you'll ever receive from the government that there will not be some kind of a fetter and a chain to go with it. And I am surely disappointed in my Baptist brethren around the country and other Christians who are willing, for the sake of a government handout, to take the shackles of the government at the same time. God help us. What about the Second Amendment? I'm glad you asked. Luke 11:21, when a strong man, are you listening? When a strong man armed keepeth his palace, his goods are in peace. I know Jesus told Peter to put up his sword, but notice he did not tell him to give up his sword. In fact, on another occasion he said, if you don't have a sword, sell what you have and go buy one. The old Roman first century sword was equivalent to our modern handguns today. Now, I don't know about anybody else, but I'll take the word of Jesus over the word of Hillary any day. Amendment is found in Deuteronomy 24:10 and 11. The Eighth Amendment is found in Deuteronomy 15:2 and 3. Even our three co-equal branches of government are patterned after the three positional offices of Jesus Christ, is found in Isaiah chapter 33 and verse 22. I say all that to say this. We don't need men and women who give lip service to a religious profession every 2 years or every 4 years at election time. We need men and women who will, by conviction, support, protect, and defend the Constitution of the United States of America. I have gone all over the country and I have tried to give this message to the American people. I just need to qualify a little bit so you know a little bit about me. During the primaries back in the spring, I did all I could do personally for the campaign and candidacy of Congressman Ron Paul of Texas. I supported him. I went to South Carolina and campaigned for him. I went to Iowa and campaigned for him. I'm a syndicated columnist, as I said earlier, and I used many of my columns on his behalf. And I've said this too, if Ron Paul had achieved the nomination of the Republican Party, I would not be doing what I'm doing today. I would still be supporting Ron Paul for president. Amen. I'm doing what I'm doing today because when I look out at back in the primary season, I looked at the rest of the Republican candidates, and it became obvious that Ron Paul was not going to be the nominee. I looked at the Democrat candidates, and I did not see another candidate on the national level that was willing to take the message of constitutional government to the American people in 2008. And ladies and gentlemen, if someone doesn't take this message to the American people, the message will die. It will go to the dustbin of history, and it will be forever forgotten. And I'm here to let the American people know that as long as Chuck Baldwin is alive, there is a message for constitutionalists and freedom-loving people. We will insist that our government return to the Constitution of the United States. On television ads and radio ads by these various and sundry politicals, they'll say I'm a conservative. Very seldom do you hear them say I'm a liberal. They'll always, most always, I'm a conservative. Even the ones who are liberals say they're conservative. But the truth of the matter is, the battle that we're facing today, and please listen to me very carefully, is not between conservatives and liberals. Because those titles mean very little today. The conservatives today, in many ways, are more liberal than the liberals were 20 or 30 years ago. I think we can make a case in many respects that John F. Kennedy was more conservative than George W. Bush. Conservatives and liberals are meaningless labels. Neither is the battle between Republicans and Democrats. Those labels mean very little. At the national level, we don't have two parties in Washington. I agree with Pat Buchanan who said we have two wings of the same bird of prey. Very little difference. What we have in America today, there is a battle going on, and it is a definitive battle, and the battle is you are either a globalist or you're an American. And ladies and gentlemen, Barack Obama is a globalist, and John McCain is a globalist. Chuck Baldwin is an American. What am I talking about? I'm talking about things like this. I'm talking about the refusal of John McCain and Barack Obama, of the Democrats and the Republicans, to secure our nation's borders. Ronald Reagan said a few years ago, and I agree with this statement, a nation without borders is not a nation. And we today are a nation without borders. I went to the border of California just a few weeks ago, and I saw firsthand, and I thought I understood what was going on down there until I got there. And I want to tell you, my friends, that as bad as you may think that it is, at the border, it's 10 times worse than that. It's not because we don't have dedicated, patriotic men and women at the customs and in the border patrol. It's not it. Those people are working arduously on our behalf, trying to protect our borders and trying to enforce our border laws. They are outgunned, outmanned, out-equipped. I saw the main border there in San Diego, the legal border, and then I went out to the wide open border, which is the real border. Thousands of miles of open territory. with nothing to prevent people from coming across. I talked to Border Patrol personnel, Border Patrol auxiliary personnel, and I saw firsthand what they're going through. And a few people scattered here and here trying to guard hundreds and hundreds of miles of open border. Going up against some of the most relentless, violent people on the planet. Coyotes, human traffickers, drug traffickers. We're talking about human smugglers. We're talking about renegade and rogue military operatives from Mexico. We're talking about people that are equipped with some of the finest firearms that money can buy, fully automatic submachine guns. And our Border Patrol people are on the border, and did you know that they do not even have issued to them by this government night vision equipment? Most of the illegal crossings come over at night. Duh! They don't even have night vision equipment. They are not given GPS equipment. And here they are on the border trying to protect our country, trying to protect our laws, and they don't have the wherewithal to do it. John McCain tried to get amnesty for illegal aliens pushed through the Congress last year. Do you really think that if he becomes president, he will stop in that pursuit? You can mark it down. When he becomes president, if he does, he will do everything he can to give amnesty and a pathway to citizenship for illegal aliens. Barack Obama the same. When it comes to illegal immigration, when it comes to securing our borders, there is no difference between John McCain and Barack Obama. Both of these men will leave our borders wide open. I say it is absolutely idiotic and asinine for a president and a government to say that we're fighting a war on terrorism halfway around the world in Iraq and Afghanistan, sending our National Guard troops to Iraq and asking them to guard the borders of Iraq, while at the same time refusing to secure our own country's borders. Are we really that stupid? We cannot see through that fallacy. The fact of the matter is, these are men that believe in global government. These are men that believe in regional government. Don't take my word for it. I challenge you to go on the website for yourself and Google up what I'm about to give you right now. Go up on the internet tonight when you get home and just Google up John McCain and the League of Democracies. He's talked about it often. He gave a major speech in front of the Hoover Institution just a few months ago, and he outlined his plan for this new League of Democracies. In the debate with Mr. Obama just a few days ago, he referred to his League of Democracies. The League of Democracies, in case you're wondering what that is, it's just the United Nations on steroids. It's just the merger of American government into global government. The merger of an American economy into a global economy. The merger of an American commerce and American enterprise system with a global enterprise system in commerce. It is the globalization of our political institutions, our economic institutions, our military institutions. President Bush in 2005 in Waco, Texas signed his Prosperity Partnership Agreement with Mexico and Canada, which is nothing more than the precursor for the North American Union and North American community. Don't take my word for it. Go to the CFR webpage. The blueprint's right there. The blueprint's right there. The blueprint's being followed right now by President Bush. And either one of these two men that are president, if they become president, will continue to follow the same blueprint. Their goal and their desire is that they will complete this North American community by the year 2010. That's just around the corner. And once they achieve that, the goal is to merge the new North American Union with the European Union by 2015. They've told us what they want to do. They're out in the open. They're not trying to hide it anymore. George Bush has bought onto it. John McCain's bought into it. Barack Obama's bought into it. That's why I'm saying these men are globalists. These men would sell and sacrifice the independence and sovereignty of the United States of America to these supranational organizations. And if somebody doesn't stand up soon and stop it, America is going to return to the same entity that that our founding fathers gave their life's blood to separate from 200 years ago. Would to God that our pastors and our evangelical friends around the country could come to understand it. Would to God that they could understand that there's more to what is going on in our government today besides abortion and homosexual marriage, as important as those issues are. Speaking of the right to life, how the Republican Party can come to evangelical Christians and other pro-life conservatives and say that they are the party that believes in the right to life is a joke. The Republican Party controlled the entire federal government from 2000 to 2006, the House, the Senate, and the White House. When Mr. Bush became president in January of 2001, over 1 million unborn babies were being slaughtered in the wombs of their mothers every year in America. When George W. Bush will leave office in January of 2009, over 1 million innocent unborn babies are still being slaughtered in the wombs of their mothers every year in America. 6 years of a supposed pro-life Congress, 6 years of a supposed pro-life Senate, 6 years of a supposed pro-life White House, and not one single unborn baby's life was spared. And yet they'll come back to gullible Christian conservatives all over America this election season and they'll say, vote for us, we need John McCain, he's going to give us pro-life justices on the Supreme Court, and we're going to do something about Roe v. Wade. They told us that back in 2004, they told us back in 2000. The fact of the matter is, it was a Republican-dominated Supreme Court that gave us Roe v. Wade in 1973. It was a Republican-dominated court that gave us Doe Bush's Bolton that secured Roe v. Wade in law. And it's been Republicans that have given us the Supreme Court appointments by a total of 72 now currently on the court bench since 1973. And yet, over 1 million babies a year are still being aborted in the wombs of their mothers every year in this country. Republicans in public office notwithstanding. Speaking of Supreme Court appointments, Chuck, if you can't think of any other reason to vote for John McCain, you got to vote for John McCain because he can give us good judges. Oh, and you mean judges like Stephen Breyer? That model of conservatism, that model of the pro-life community, Stephen Breyer. Yes, John McCain voted to seat Stephen Breyer. Oh, you mean justices like the ACLU attorney Ruth Bader Ginsburg? Yes, John McCain voted to seat Ruth Bader Ginsburg to the Senate Supreme Court. These Christians need to understand that they are being used by these phony conservatives in the Republican Party just for the purpose of getting their votes, and after their votes are gotten and they get into power, they forget every promise they made, they forget everything they said. And why are we as Christians so foolish as to continue to allow ourselves to be duped time and time and time again? When I talk about global government, I talk about Americanism versus globalism, I'm talking about things like the Patriot Act. I'm talking about the violation of our Fourth Amendment freedoms, whereby it is supposed to be the duty of government to protect the right of an American citizen to be secure in his persons and effects in his own home. But under the Patriot Act, you can come home from work one day and your house has been ransacked and your computer is stolen. Books and furniture have been torn up. The whole house is in disarray. The front door is off its hinges. You pick up the phone if it still works and you call 911 and the local sheriff's deputy comes out and you file a police report. And as far as you're concerned and as far as the local police are concerned, this was the work of a group of burglars or maybe one or two that came in and did this to your property. It's filed, duly noted. But you didn't know that wasn't a bunch of local burglars. That was the FBI, or it could have been the Drug Enforcement Agency. It could have been any other number of those alphabet police, national police agencies that came into your home without a court order, without a judge signing off on it, without a justifiable reason, without having to prove in a court of law, at least there is a reasonable suspicion to assume that there's something there that needs to be discovered and brought before a court of law. Without any of that being done, they can come into your home, they can violate the privacy of your home, they can steal your property, you won't even know who did it. They can tap your phones, they can read your emails, they can open your mail. Ladies and gentlemen, that's what they used to do over there in the old Soviet Union. That's what they used to do over there in Nazi Germany. That's what they do over there in Males, China. That's not what we do in the United States of America. If you think it can't happen to you, you're wrong. It can happen to you, and it's happening to people just like you all over this country. That's all a part of this Orwellian globalistic system, this idea of the militarization of local police, and now with the Department of Homeland Security and everything that's evolving in the way that now that we are engaging our culture in such a way as that you have to prove your innocence. Instead of being innocent until proven guilty, you're guilty until proven innocent. When you walk into an airport, you're walking into a foreign country. You don't have any right. You don't have any constitutional rights in an airport. They're gone. You could be in any socialist state anywhere in the world when you walk into any American airport. And we as Christians, and we as Baptists, we as fundamentalists, calling yourself what you will, we stand back and we tolerate that and we put up with this, and then we say we're patriotic Americans, we say we believe in the faith of our fathers. We don't know what the faith of our fathers was. The faith of our fathers would never tolerate this kind of tyranny. The faith of our fathers caused them to sign that Declaration of Independence and then pick up their muskets to back up that Declaration of Independence, in order that their posterity, you and me, could live in a land of freedom. And I hear people say, well, you know, all I'm supposed to do is preach the gospel. Well, that's all I'm called to do. Oh, really? Well, if that's true, then don't you dare ever again have a patriotic service in your church. Don't you ever again dare to attend a 4th of July parade. Don't you ever dare again to have a patriotic emphasis in your church. To talk about patriotism and what July 4th means and what Independence Day is all about. Don't you dare mock the memory of your forebears by pretending that you respect what they did and that you revere the sacrifices that they make, when you turn around and would deny to your posterity the same freedoms and the same liberties that they bequeathed to you. If they were not willing to fight the fight of freedom, if they were not willing to give that document their blood and their lives and their fortunes and sacred honor, you would not even have a pulpit. Another part of this globalistic agenda is the ongoing, unending, perpetual war. I want to tell you, ladies and gentlemen, that perpetual war is a tool of the globalists to enslave us. Right. We would not have the Patriot Act, we would not have the Department of Homeland Security, we would not have this emerging, talk about the emerging church, Dr. Don, how about the emerging police state? We wouldn't have that today if it wasn't for the reaction to 9/11 and the preemptive, undeclared war of aggression in Iraq. Yes, you heard me right. An undeclared war of aggression. Our president, on his own authority, invaded a country that had nothing to do with Iraq, actually nothing to do with 9/11, had nothing to do with the attack on our people. But because of the war fever and the war enthusiasm and the war doctrine created by this administration, we have the Patriot Act, we have the Department of Homeland Security, and we have all this emergent police state that we're now dealing with. Ask your congressmen that were in Congress in the 1990s when Bill Clinton was in office if they'd ever seen that Patriot Act before it was passed under President Bush. And they will tell you that jot and tittle, they'd seen it before. But it wasn't George Bush and Dick Cheney that was giving it and asking Congress to pass. It was Bill Clinton and Al Gore. Same document. It was called something else, but it was the same document. But the Republicans in Congress rose up against it and said, we're not going to support that. That's tyrannical. That's unconstitutional. Why? We're not going to go back and try to justify a vote like this to our people back home. Why? We believe in freedom. We believe in liberty. We believe in the Constitution. We believe in the Bill of Rights. We're not going to sign that. And the Republicans in the 1990s shot it down and it didn't pass. After 9/11 and after the war in Iraq, the Republican president and the Republican vice president come before Congress, which was controlled by Republicans now, they passed the same draconian legislation that just a few years before they had nothing to do with. What's the difference? We're at war. It's national security. Benjamin Franklin had a great quote that you need to remember. Benjamin Franklin said, "They who would give up essential liberty for temporary security deserve neither." What good does it do to fight a war for democracy? And we're not a democracy, we're a republic. Halfway around the world, then to turn around and steal the liberties that we have in America at home should show us that this war is not for democracy, it's not for freedom, it's for something else altogether. And the longer we stay at war, the longer we stay in an alerted condition, the more our freedoms and our liberties are going to be taken from us. Piece by piece, until there's nothing left. As President of the United States, I would never send our troops to attack and occupy a foreign country without a declaration of war by Congress first. This bailout is just another form of globalism. It's another tentacle in the hairy body of globalism. Can you believe that we're going to give over $1 trillion, in fact we've already given over $1 trillion, including the $700 billion bailout, to these Wall Street banksters? And I use that word intentionally. The same ones who created the mess, and we're going to pay them $1 trillion to get us out of the mess that they created? You got to be insane to come up with that kind of logic. The Federal Reserve System is a fraud. Was a bad year in the life of the United States. We got the 16th Amendment, and we got the precursor to the IRS, and we got the Federal Reserve, and our economy has been in trouble ever since. The Federal Reserve has superintended over several recessions, one Great Depression, and now perhaps the greatest economic failure of all. And what do Barack Obama and John McCain propose? They are both on the campaign stunt, telling the American people that they should support the the bailout of the Wall Street banksters. I don't want to bail out the Wall Street banksters. I want to put them in jail for fraud. While the people that were investing in these fraudulent schemes were losing everything, losing their retirements, losing their insurance, losing their jobs, their livelihoods, their homes, these guys are sailing in their yachts and flying in their private planes and living in mansions all over the world, and they have the audacity to come to hardworking American people and say, we want $700 billion of your dollars to help this situation make it through. You know, compare that. Go back to if I'm not mistaken now, somebody's going to, I'm sure, check it out, but I think it was 1907. We had a bank failure occur. It was none other than J.P. Morgan himself who got up in front of his fellow bankers and said, gentlemen, our banking institution is in trouble. It's time for you and me to step up to the plate and get it out of the trouble. He didn't go to the government and ask for a handout. He didn't come to the American people and ask for a handout. He went to his fellow bankers and said, will you join me and let's put in our own money and let's save this institution. And that's exactly what they did. I say, Mr. Paulson, if you want to save the mess you created, why don't you give a couple $100 million of your money? Listen to us. But it all is for an agenda. President Bush stands up and says, the world will come through this together. The leaders of the free world are coming together to create a financial stability that will be sure that this never happens again. I wonder what that means. It means global government. Because you cannot have global economy if you don't have a global government to manage it. That's what it means. That's why I said, you're either a globalist or you're American. Let me just end with this. One of my favorite characters in American history is Daniel Webster. I want to give you a couple of quotes. I want you to listen to what Daniel Webster said. Perhaps America's most celebrated jurist. Hold on, my friends, to the Constitution and to the Republic. Did you get that? To the Republic for which it stands. Miracles do not cluster. America is a miracle. Miracles do not cluster. And what has happened once in 6,000 years may not happen again. Hold on to the Constitution. For if the Constitution, if the American Constitution should fail, there will be anarchy throughout the world. And I want to say, the hand that destroys the Constitution rends our union apart forever. This is the same Daniel Webster now who said, if we abide by the principles taught in the Bible, our country will go on prospering and prospering. But if we, in our austerity, neglect its instruction and authority, no man can tell how sudden a catastrophe may overwhelm us and bury all of our glory in profound obscurity. You see, Daniel Webster, like most of America's founders, was a deeply religious man of Christian faith. He believed the Bible. He was a believer. And he found no contradictions between the Bible and the Constitution. In fact, he believed that the Constitution, along with the Declaration of Bill of Rights, was the best safeguard to Christian liberty that we have. If God would, by His grace and by a miraculous act of providence, put me into the Oval Office in January of 2009, I would put one hand on an open Bible. I would raise another hand to heaven, and I would promise God and the American people that I would preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution of the United States. And ladies and gentlemen, I'm here to tell the Indianapolis Baptist Temple and all of our guests and friends that are assembled here tonight, that is exactly what I would do. God bless you.